Thank you. Um, Now hang on. Gotta gotta stop my slide from taking up the whole of my screen so I can see what we're doing. Um, right, so this is session 3. Um, we're going to be looking at facilitation, and really kind of taking a pretty basic view of it. There may be people in here who've done quite a lot of facilitation. I hope that there are still like interesting things for you, and also just thinking and talking about facilitation is always interesting. But we are starting at what I hope is quite a kind of a level where people who haven't done it before are going to feel comfortable and going to feel like that they're getting help to get started. It's only one of many, many roles in an assembly, but it's an important one. We're going to go through a little, well, we're going to check in first, then have a little introduction from me and Justin, and then a chat amongst anybody who's got something to say or questions or thoughts to share. And then we're going to dig into some of the things that you're bringing, using a process that will teach you. That's also one of the really helpful facilitation tools for kind of working with groups. And that may be all that we have time for. We're hoping to also get time to make a group decision on a group sort of consent process on the group agreement that we came up with last week. If we don't manage to make time for that this week, we'll definitely fit it in next week. But I wanted, just before we split into our groups for checking in, I just wanted us to kind of take a short moment just to land here together in this group. I often find myself racing from one thing to another, and can also come into online spaces with a little bit of like, oh my God, there's a lot of windows here. Who are all these people? And who am I again? And why am I here? So I just wanted to invite us to a 2-minute little move into our own space, sort of drawing back from the screen, and moving into our own space. If it helps you to do that, to close your eyes, then do, or maybe you just want to look down at the floor. Just notice your breath. And notice if you're bringing discomfort with you into this space, whether it's from stuff that you've been going through today or just from being in an online space with a whole bunch of people, um, staring at a screen, or if there are other bodily discomforts, I guess, just bring your attention to what isn't feeling okay. Um, and give permission for that to be here too. And if there's tension that you're holding around any of that, then notice the tension. And if it feels safe and helpful, then maybe encourage the tension to release a little bit. Maybe using your breath to help with that. There's a lot around judgment and self-judgment in facilitation, probably in everything that we do. So it's good to start with just a kind of checking in with ourselves. But it's also really nice to check in with other people. And hopefully over the weeks, we're kind of developing relationships, getting to know the other people who are in these sessions. So we're going to go into groups of 4 or 4-ish, because breakouts don't always totally work. And we're going to use that council process, or I'm inviting you to use that council process again that we did in the first week, where we divide the time, which will be 20 minutes, between the people who are there. So with 4 people, that gives you, probably with all the faff of starting and getting into rooms and deciding who's going to be the timekeeper, probably just over 4 minutes each. So if you find somebody to volunteer to timekeep and go around in a circle, so each person gets roughly the same amount of time to speak. And when you're speaking, speak from the heart. Just we have some prompts, and one of them is just how you're doing. It would be absolutely fine to spend your whole time just saying how you're feeling. You may also want to pick up on the question that we asked at the end of the last session, which was around whether compassion for yourself or compassion for the other when you're in relationship with somebody else, which one of those gets more of a look in. Or maybe you have them really well balanced. But it's just if you've had any reflections on that, feel free to share that. Or any other reflections that you've had since last week, or anything else you want to talk about. So it's pretty open. Was there anything else I needed to say? No, I think that's okay. Any questions before we go into breakouts? All good? Okay, have fun. Super hot. Right, so David's gone. Anna, Barbara, or scan events. Does anyone need any help?
I'll assign Joanna a second to a room. And maybe Francine needs to be put in a room.
Okay, so do you know who scan events is? Is that?
Yeah, it's Joanna. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Should be.
Right.
Scan events. Could you reveal yourself? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a volunteer. Let me message them.
I'm very sorry. It's David Somerville here. I'm not able to log into my iMac. I'm just about to try. I'm just very sorry to be coming in late. Got and I can't seem to get the thing on my phone to allow me. Here we are. Here we are. Hello,
David.
Hello. I'm trying. I'm booting up. Apologies for being late. I'm booting up my iMac, and hopefully it'll come in shortly. So I'll come in shortly through the regular way.
Right. That's great. And Lindsay's just flown in.
One of the things.
Hey, Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay.
Can we allocate
5? Yeah.
Let me guess. Everyone's in a breakout room. Nice
to
see you all.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you very much, Johanna.
No problem.
Francine was not. Was maybe just in listening mode last time. Is that? I'm guessing that's again. You're just going to join us orally, Francine. Happy to have you. And I wanted to check in with Anna because great. I wanted to check in with Anna because we talked about you doing a little spot on. Oh, she's gone. We talked about Anna doing a little spot on hand signals. So I wonder when to do that. Would you be okay if we did that in between my bit and your bit, Justin? You're muted.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Great. Assuming she wants to just offer it, and if she's up for it, but yeah.
Yeah, Yes, absolutely. I'm slightly springing it on her because she did say she did offer, and she said yes, she was totally up for it. But then I totally forgot to
It's fine.
sort of talk to her about it. So I think she'll be up for it. But we'll see.
Okay, so we have till 7, do we?
Sorry?
We have till 7 just now?
Yes.
Maybe we could have a couple of minutes each.
Yeah.
I would suggest to just kind of go around and say how we are, and yeah, I would like that to offer. I mean, I guess good start. That's what you're supposed to do, aren't you? When you suggest something like that, then you're the one who starts. I'll start, and if anybody else wants to follow, then great. And if you don't, then they'll just get 2 minutes of me. Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's a funny, online is funny, isn't it? It's a funny world. It's different to being. I've just come from being in a room with two friends, talking with them, and it's like people are equally present actually in both. So something about getting my mind around the fact that here is everybody. Here's the 6 of us in our different modes. And I guess I'm still recovering from the training we were on last week, the week-long training, which I hope to say something about in the whole group. And just really, I'm really happy for this session. I guess I'm really happy to be at this session, reflecting on facilitation and what is needed in facilitation. I feel really, really happy to be here. It feels a really good thing to reflect on whether people are going to be facilitating or going to be in.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And there was a question about the music. I just put the answer in the chat. So I hope that was nice to see each other. It's nice to see all your faces for however long. We're just going to go into a bit of an intro. Just some thoughts about facilitation, and then we can have a chat about that, about your perspectives on whether that was useful or interesting, or what stuck out to you as interesting, as unusual, as unexpected, or as stressful. So there's an invitation here to just notice your inner talk and feelings as you're listening, to just pick up on when you're kind of going, oh, I didn't think that, or that you're going, oh God, when she talks about that, I just suddenly feel really stressed. So that, just that kind of that self-reflexivity. That's one of the things that we're really, really trying to find different ways to encourage in ourselves, in this group, and then also in the assemblies that we run. Because it's something that's often not allowed. We're not supposed to say when we're in the middle of a process and something starts to really annoy us, or we get really puzzled, or we get really curious and excited and interested. We're supposed to go with the process the way it's supposed to be. And I guess that's part of what I wanted to start off by saying about facilitation, is that it's about trying to help a group do what it wants to do. So it's different from we think of as leadership, and we can have big conversations about what is leadership. But we often think of leadership as like, I will take you, I will, with my force of character, lead you towards a place that I know you want to go, or I feel like we need to go together. Facilitation is much more, where does this group want to go? How can we find out where the kind of will of this group is? And sometimes it's already set. Sometimes it's set. People turn up to a meeting that's about such and such, and so that's already there. But quite often in assemblies, there may be a need to be trying to unpick and trying to elicit from the group what it wants to do. And there are different ways of doing that. Within all of that, particularly when you're working on the hoof in the moment, there are just hundreds and hundreds of judgment calls for you as the facilitator, as the person who's kind of on the spot, who's been given and has taken responsibility for the kind of will of the group. And you have ample opportunity to get things wrong or to just do things in a way that you could have done differently. And it can lead to a lot of self-talk, of like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, what are they thinking? Quite often the self-talk can feel like it's what other people are thinking. So my self-talk often happens like not what I think about myself. Oh, you idiot. I'm thinking, God, they're just thinking what an idiot I am. And so I imagine my critical voice gets projected out onto other people. And I can feel that there's a lot of criticism of me or of how I'm doing things. And it can really get in the way of me being able to be present, of me being able to be in my adult self, of me being able to be kind of light on my feet and thinking kind of creatively. So attending to noticing how your critical self-talk happens when you're in that kind of like quite exposed position, and learning and reflecting on what helps me to calm down, what helps me to come back into the moment, what helps me to say, I don't know what these people are thinking, and it's really their business. But whatever it is, that's part of you becoming a facilitator, is being able to handle those kind of things. So it's quite a powerful role. Helping the group get where it wants to get, particularly when we're talking about democracy, and the intention to come to better decisions. It can be tempting, as a facilitator, to lean towards what you think are sensible decisions, and it can be very easy to guide a group towards what you think makes sense. And in some ways, you have to do that, because you're constantly making these judgment calls. But being really mindful of the power of the role that you have, and trying as much as you can to be fair and even-handed, and to allow voices, to make space for voices that you disagree with or that make you feel uncomfortable, is also part of that kind of quite tricky job of being a facilitator. So yeah, so the kind of hope is that we can encourage and ensure a collective process that enables individuals in the group to connect with their kind of deeper understanding, with their intelligence and with their wisdom, and to bring that out in relationship with other people. So that involves creating quite a safe space. I don't think any space is completely safe, and ones that are in public with people who you may be neighbours with people who you may disagree quite strongly with, are not always going to feel safe. But the safety to be able to disagree, and to feel like you will have to trust that you will get your voice heard, is really important. And all of that is part of the kind of culture that you're trying to set up in the group. And that's what we were talking about last week with the group agreement. And it's something that you can embody as well as a facilitator. So the way that a facilitator shows up in a group will bring elements of the culture in with it. So if you're relaxed and open, if you're asking questions and encouraging questions as a facilitator, then you're adding to that kind of positive culture of curiosity and of allowing things that may not be exactly planned to happen. And if you show up kind of tense and a bit rigid and like, we've got to do it like this, and no, you're not allowed to speak yet, and all of that, even though sometimes you may need to say those kind of things, then you will be contributing to a different kind of culture that may not be so supportive of people exploring things. And yeah, so what else? I think within that, and this is something that Justin's going to speak a bit more about, it's also really important to be aware that you will have blind spots, that you will have areas of the human experience that you haven't really touched in your life. And that there will be individuals and groups of people in the room who will need extra support and help to really trust that their voice is welcome. The course that Justin and I were on was full of kind of polarization around race and around ability and disability. And it really helped me to understand a bit better just how deep that mistrust goes, because people have lived their entire lives in a culture that hasn't really made space for them, that doesn't really fully want them to be around, which is an incredibly hard thing to live with. And it's really important that as facilitators, we're exploring that we're alive to those issues, that we're alive to the parts of us that have privilege and that are likely to not see other people's oppression. And it's an ongoing work. In the end, it's really just about, as much as possible, being kind to one another, and also kind to ourselves. So it's like, you don't beat yourself up because you might have a lot of privilege, but at the same time, you try to be humble and open to other people's experience. So yeah, there's practical issues. There's a lot of practical issues, and we will go into those in more detail at different points during the course, particularly around the kind of design in terms of the sorts of structures that we can use that will help groups to deal with difficult issues or complex issues and really be able to think them through and get their voices heard. And there are areas where it's really a case of kind of just like holding our nerve when things can get quite difficult in groups, and where again we're being sort of on point as the facilitator can become quite stressful. It's really good to not facilitate on your own. Few people will even in quite small groups will facilitate all the time on their own, because it's really easy to miss things. It's really easy to get tired. It's really easy to get triggered and need to take a step back. And then you need to have somebody else in there who can pick up the thread. Yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to say. Thank you, Sarah. It's a safety issue. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to pass over to Justin to share a bit of your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Eva. And it was very nice seeing Lindsay's kid and Rika's kid and Chelsea's cat. Just noticing the other beings who are here, and see everybody else as well. And it's interesting listening to you, Eva. And when I've been in groups with you, you are facilitating normally in a very kind of safe-making way. That's the fundamental quality that I feel like you bring to those groups. So it's very interesting hearing you focusing on the opposite of that, on the discomfort of the facilitator, and just wondering how people are with listening to what sounds like very hard work as opposed to the kind of joy of facilitating, because it is wonderful to facilitate groups when groups can be helped to move forward and do what they want to do, and people are often really grateful when people are facilitating in a way that is really enabling. So I just want to highlight the fact that you've been kind of talking to the shadow side of it, and that's really important to do. And that's what this session is very much about. It's about the skills, but also about noticing the pitfalls as well. And so for myself, I'm a white middle-class male, whatever, add to the list in terms of privilege. And going on a 5-day training last week that I thought was on facilitation around climate change, and that was actually about structural violence and how we're differently positioned in society. And it was incredibly helpful for me as somebody who can be quite confident because of my background, because of how I was brought up to be quite confident, but actually to realize how much of that confidence is based on the privilege I have rather than on experience. I mean, there is maybe, I don't know what there is based on experience, but there is that privilege and there's the confidence, and it really stops you, I think, stops me, talk about me, stops me really empathizing and understanding what it's like for somebody who doesn't have that privilege. So last week I was in this 5-day training with Eva where I really felt like my voice was not wanted, and it wasn't wanted. There was space for the voices of those who aren't heard, and I'm heard a lot, and I'm being heard now, I'm aware as I'm speaking. So I got a lot of inner criticism in that process and outer criticism. And it was incredibly helpful to come out kind of going, okay, so I need to be aware of how much I'm not aware of, how much privilege stops you being aware of, and how much when somebody is really experiencing the difficult end of society, they can be really aware of what's going on in a way that somebody who has privilege isn't. So I just want to put that on the table, as it were, to own up to who I am and that I'm really wanting to listen and be supportive. And yet I'm speaking right now because I offered to. So it's all kind of paradoxical. But I guess what I came down to was just the feeling of there's 3 levels of this. One level is the task you're engaged in together. So what are you trying to do as a group when you're bringing a group together from the community, when a community wants to have an assembly process? What's that for? What's going on? There's a kind of task that you're trying to undertake. There's then a level where you need to be managing the relationships and enabling people to work well together through using the kind of techniques we'll be using over the rest of this course. But also at that level, you need to be aware of who isn't speaking and who is speaking and why, and making the space for those who don't speak to step forward, and making the space for those who don't listen to really listen and not speak. So there's a real both benefit from that. There's a kind of notion that you only benefit from speaking, whereas to listen is just such huge benefit and is so underrated in our society. So you at one level, you're trying to engage in an action together. You're trying to arrive at a process, build an assembly around an issue. That's the kind of one level of it, which is really crucial about engaging and changing the world and restoring the world. At that middle level, you're using processes to ensure that everybody is equally present, not because of some theory of equality, but because that's the richest place when people really see and value each other and hear each other fully. And then at the third level, the kind of deeper level, there's something about really just seeing each other as humans, despite those structural differences, and recognizing the impact of those structural differences on each other too. So there's kind of those 3 levels that we'll be working with, is that the level of wanting to get something done, but very often in our society, we focus so much on trying to get something done that we cause mayhem on the way. We marginalize people, we don't listen, and so on. And then the third level down, really enabling ourselves to be humans together. So I don't know which level of those any of us find most awkward, because normally some of us are more familiar with the action level, or some of us are more familiar with the group dynamics level, or some of us are more familiar with the heart level, but they often challenge. Second.
Request to repeat the second level.
The second level is that level of group dynamics which is the kind of what we'll be focusing on a lot in terms of what forms to use, what facilitative forms to use to enable everybody to be heard. So it's that middle level of the dynamics and the structural inequalities. And ironically, when we were doing the last assembly we were doing up in Torry, or at least the last assembly in this country, in Scotland, up in Torry and Aberdeen, we were mostly a middle-class facilitation group working in a very working class environment, and we weren't necessarily bringing a really strong awareness of that. I mean, there are others here who can reflect on that, but it just the need to really be aware and not to then stop yourself from doing anything. Just because you are X doesn't mean you shouldn't do Y, but to be aware of that. So I guess all I wanted to say was something about in that process, listening from the heart and speaking from the heart is really vital. Listening is as crucial as speaking. Not as a theory, but as a reality. Deeply listening is incredibly important, and being able to say less when you're used to saying a lot, and being able to listen more when be able to say more when you're used to listening is kind of crucial. So, Eva, I'm not sure if that's what I was going to, because that was what I wanted to say in response to hearing you, really, and I hope that's well, that's what I've said.
Yeah, that's great. And what it was making me think about was that I think a lot of this. If you load everything that we're saying into the moment, the few hours that you might be running an assembly, it feels absolutely massive. But one of the things that we say over and over again, our experience is that the assembly part of the assembly process is 10% or less of the time that you put in too. It feels like maybe more like 1%. The run up where you're going out and talking to people, where you're making relationships, where you're asking questions and really listening to people in the community, that whole process is where a lot of this can happen. A lot of this trust building, a lot of this really listening to people and being able to incorporate things into the assembly process that mean that people will feel a bit more trust in it. So it's not, it's quite different in a way to the course that we were on, in that because we're talking about working within a local community, at least that's what we've been doing. There's a lot of time to be able to really try and dig into those kind of feelings of exclusion, feelings of not trust, and build relationship and ask the right kinds of questions so that people will come to an assembly with some relationship and hopefully already with a bit of trust. So yeah, I didn't want to feel like it's all loaded on that kind of like one facilitation moment. It's much broader than that. I wanted to open it out, but I'm also aware that Anna, you have offered a couple of times to and I don't want to jump on you. If you're not feeling up to it, then don't. But you've offered to share the hand signals with us, which I think are really, really useful, particularly for online gatherings, although they're really great in person as well. It looks like you're traveling somewhere. Would you be up for doing it like a short slot with us on those kind of meeting, that sort of very simple meeting language that can allow us to communicate non-verbally in meetings, as an addition to, and sometimes as a shortcut to, the verbal language that we use. Looks like Anna's up for it. Some of you may already be familiar with this stuff. It was very prevalent in Extinction Rebellion meetings. But yeah, Anna, if you're up for it, then please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Eva. I'm not feeling at my strongest today, but it was actually a day with a difficult action in activism. But I'll do my best. I will start with explaining that this may vary a little bit from country to country. Okay, and my experience mostly here is a little bit in the UK, a little bit in New Zealand, but meanwhile, most of it here in Portugal. So what I'm used to, what we're doing here may be a little bit different from what from what people are doing in the UK and in other parts. But so basically, when you see me doing this, and you may have already seen me doing that a lot. So this basically is I agree, I vouch for that, or I like that. This is like a general agreement, or yeah, cool. Like usually, even if you're not asked, but you want to show appreciation, that's fine. Then when we actively want people to vote, with I agree, or I'm not so sure, or I don't agree, then it's like, yeah, up, middle, down. So that's actually voting, but it needs to be clear that you are asking for a vote. Jazz hands, is that the name? I didn't know that's called jazz hands. Okay, yeah. The other facilitator here also knows, Sarah. Cool. And then this is one that I like a lot. This is the giraffe, and this is when we need silence. And so if you see this, you must replicate and do the same. And at some point, everyone in the room will be like this. And then the person who's very talkative will still be ba, 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 until they actually see what's happening. So, so this is a request for silence because something needs to be said. Yeah. What else? Oh, when something is being said, so someone is speaking about, who can do it? Yeah. someone speaking about whatever topic, and then someone else wants to also speak, and a third person, a second person, and a third, and a fourth, and you raise fingers, like you're the next one, like no one else has their finger up, and you want to speak, so you can put a one, and there's no one else apart from that one, and I want to speak, I'll put a two, and so forth. Okay, so then you'll have people with a one or a two or a three or a four in here, and whoever's mediating can then yeah, go the first, the second, the third, the fourth. I hope that was clear. Um, yeah, and finally, oh, um, if what you want to say is specifically related with that that is being said by that person in that moment, like you just need a clarification, or you want to add something that is important for everyone to understand what's being said there. So there are two ways. One is a C for clarification, just like, and this jumped in priority. So that person should be given a voice in that moment because they are adding to what's being said. They don't need to wait for the one, two, three, da, 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 da. So just this, or in other places, it's also done like this. So just like, I want to, I want to go directly to this, to this point to clarify direct response. Yeah. One source for the raised hands and waving fingers is from South African native cultures, and has a sound with I would tell yes, yeah, yeah. Several different communities have similar ways to communicate like this. Um, this is all I can remember right now. I think there are a few more, but these are the most commonly used.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And it is really nice to use them, especially in online meetings where we maybe get slightly less visual cues from people, and when we're not quite so together. So if somebody says something that you like or you appreciate, then just giving them a little twinkle makes them kind of feel encouraged. So it's good to try to get into the habit of using these. I got into the habit so much when over lockdown that when I went to see my doctor, he was telling me to do things and I was going it felt rather stupid. But yeah, I like them. Yeah, exactly. Um, yes, two fingers up, a direct point is a way of jumping the queue. So you need to use it. You need to use it like really kind of with a lot of integrity. So it's not just that you're really keen to say your point and you want to say it before anybody else. It is adding to something that somebody is saying that needs to be said right now rather than when it's your turn. So it's quite one to be used with caution, that. So yes, thank you very much, Anna. And that's another way that we can kind of facilitate ourselves in a group and facilitate one another. Does anybody have anything that they would like to say on what's already been said, on their own experience of facilitation? Right. Yeah, Evie can't see all of us. I know it's frustrating, Evie, but just inviting you to do the best you can. Tim.
Just something that you just said, which reminded me that facilitation is a function, not necessarily a role. So basically the more we all facilitate ourselves and each other, the less work the facilitator has to do. And when you get a really good group, you barely need a facilitator. That's when you've got a great level. And the facilitator just sits there, kind of makes sure, you go through the points in order because they've got the sheet or whatever with the agenda on it, and then says thanks at the end, and that's it. And that's a wonderful group, and it's a joy and a surprise to find yourself in that space very often. But yeah, but it's a nice thing to kind of not just put all the responsibility onto the school teacher at the front. And to allow everybody to be full adults in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tim. Barbara.
Hi, thanks. Yeah. No, it's just kind of on the hand signals. I think it was really useful to have that as a mechanism. But I think just and I think Anna, you did kind of say this at the beginning, that different people might have slightly different interpretations depending on the culture. So I think if that is something that you're using in other meetings, just to reiterate, to make it clear that everybody understands what hand signal means what at the beginning, so that they're not misinterpreting hand signals throughout the session. So yeah, it was just a kind of comment on that, I guess.
Yeah, it makes loads of sense. And it's something that's really easy to forget, particularly if some people know it and some people don't, and you're used to using them or you've forgotten about using them. Yeah, it's a good note. Alex.
Just a small thing, but I think it's important for me. Facilitation is really not being the teacher at the front. It's holding the container within which things can happen, and I think it looks effortless if you're doing it right. So I think it looks like you're doing nothing at all, in fact. So not to take away from Tim's point of people facilitating themselves, which of course is also helpful and great, but just that it's about one way I think about it is, what's the smallest thing I can do to enable the group further so that I keep my interventions to a bare minimum. And it's that container that is, and holding the container of energy that people are working in is I think super important for me.
That's a really lovely way to put it, Alex, and a really nice question to ask yourself as a facilitator. And I think what the little tension there between you and Tim is a real tension. It's like, if you're standing up at the front, even if your absolute intention is not to replicate a teacher-pupil relationship, just because we've all been through that for so many years at such a formative stage, we will tend to make that the case or assume it anyway. So I think, that all that kind of culture setting piece is super important, to just try and kind of make little dents in that. Evie.
Was it Tim who just said, if in a group where everybody's almost doing it? I can't remember what he said, but all I wanted to say was that my experience is that in a good group, everybody, anyway, it's our job to support the facilitator. It is just a role. They're not a leader or anything. It's just their turn to be kind of help, like you said earlier, helping the group to do whatever it is needing to do. And so, we're there to support that person to do a good job, or to be there for them if they need a break or they need a bit of advice or whatever. It's also a role you can always hand on. Like you said, it's good if you do it with somebody else. But I think my experience is quite narrow. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that, Evie. Scott.
Oh, hi. Yep. It was just a wee comment that Tim made in the chat, which is great, but it said that it's a very polite method. And it's just maybe something to consider. I think it's good for clarity and it's a tool that everyone can use, but like especially in like British society, like politeness has been weaponized a lot, in terms of if you're not able to come across politely, or if you can't frame things in a way that maybe, the middle classes would, or whatever, therefore your point is delegitimized, when actually voices of dissent and things that come across maybe outside the boundaries of what we consider acceptable, sometimes breaking these rules. That doesn't mean, if someone was to break these rules, that doesn't therefore mean that their points are now unacceptable, or because they didn't adhere to this polite society that we have created through these through our little hand signals and things, right? But I think they are a tool that can be used. Very important, but just understand this: it's there to help people, and help the course, to help the meeting to run. It's not there therefore to create a sort of overly polite kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Scott. And I think that, yeah, I guess one of the risks we run in creating in working hard to create a group culture is that we create a culture which will exclude people who weren't there at the beginning or who don't like that culture. So it's like it always needs to be semi-permeable. It always needs to be okay not to adhere to the culture, and for that not to be a reason to exclude you or kind of somehow render your voice invalid. Yeah, it's super tricky, but it's humans, so it's going to be super tricky. It's like none of this is easy. Yeah. I want to maybe just take Anna and David and then take a quick break, maybe just a 5 minute run and get a cup of tea or go to the loo or whatever, because we are, as usual, running a little bit late. Anna, to you.
Sorry, just to say, wow, really loving listening to all of you. And I forgot this one that is also quite useful when we're suggesting someone to please round up, like we would love to hear you, but we need closure on that idea. Just this.
Wrap it up.
Yes.
That's possibly the one I use the most often. Maybe not fairly. I don't know. David.
I'll try not to get that sign used. I think it's very important what Eva said about facilitation being a way of enabling people to do things. I mean, when I'm running meetings, what I try and do is not say too much, just guide the discussion, not into put my influence on the meeting. And as somebody who was co-convener of a national committee of a political party, that is quite a skill sometimes. But we did, without saying too much, we did have occasions when both of the co-conveners disagreed with the decision that had been made by the committee, but we didn't think ourselves superior to the other members of the committee. So the fact that we were outvoted was fine. You know, that's democracy in action. Who's to say that we're right and the other people are wrong? So I think you have to be a little bit humble when you're facilitating as well, and realizing that you might not be at the bee's knees. And I'm not getting any wrap-up signals, but I'll just shut up now anyway.
Thanks, David. Okay, so should we take a quick break, just a bio break until 45 minutes past the hour, 15 to the hour. I think probably all on UK time, but just in case. And I were busy. Thank you. We're busy wrangling about the next part. So what we wanted to do was an exercise that is based on something called World Cafe. It isn't quite the World Cafe process. I don't know. Can I have a little show of hands of who's done a World Cafe process before? Quite a lot of people, but not everybody. So World Cafe is one of a couple of exercises that are really, really good for including people and digging more deeply into questions. The other one is called Open Space, and it generates the whole range of conversations that anybody in the room wants to have for in that moment, and finds a place for all of those conversations to happen. and then enables people to engage with those conversations and also move between them. And although it's probably one of my favorite things to do with groups, it takes quite a long time to set up. World Cafe is quite a lot more prescriptive in that, in general, the group is not given a choice about what we're going to talk about. Although you can do it where people have a choice, it's normally a much more limited number, so like 3 or 4 topics. And what happens is the people go into a group and then they travel round, say, these 3 different topics as their group. So everybody eventually has spoken, has been part of a conversation about each of the topics. And the way that gets communicated is that one person stays in the room or stays on the table or wherever you're having the conversation. And each time a new group comes in, they kind of catch everyone up with the conversation as it's been so far. And then it takes off from there. So the idea is that you're building on what's already being said rather than and not going over stuff that you've gone over before. So we can do that online by creating breakout rooms with names. And Justin and I can be in one of each of the breakout rooms and hold that kind of facilitator, reporter, note taker role. And I wonder whether somebody would like to have practice being the third facilitator, note taker person. Anybody up for doing that? I'm not sure if that's an offer, David, or just a comment. Yeah,
I can offer, but if somebody'd like to practice, I'd be fine. I don't need practice.
You don't need practice.
A lot. No, I don't want to take the space away from someone to practice.
Sure.
If you want someone to hold, I'm happy to hold it.
Thanks, Alex. And it wasn't looking like they had too many people jumping up and down to do that. But do note that if you suddenly decide you want to practice, Alex is happy to step down. So the things that we thought would be good to talk about, I will put in the chat, and we can make these into the breakout rooms. But I want to introduce them slightly first. So one of them would be about positive self-talk and care practices that we can use to handle this internal and maybe external critic as facilitators. So it's really just kind of sharing our experiences of what helps us, and listening to what works for other people. So it's a kind of resource gathering exercise to talking about that, what it feels like when you notice that either negative self-talk or you're imagining negative talk out there. The second one was about what helps us notice our privilege and our blind spots and helps us include more of ourselves and other people in the process. And I think that's fairly self-explanatory. The last one, I think it was something that Justin came up with, and I don't think I caught it quite right for you, Justin. So I wrote, how do we navigate between the world we want to create and the world that is? But how would you say it?
That was really reflecting on that conversation there between Tim and Alex. So the world we want is one where everybody's facilitating and everybody's in that role of facilitation. And the world as is one where if you're standing at the front, you're likely to be seen as the teacher, even though you don't want to be. So it's just something about acknowledging that we move between those worlds and how do we do that? But I mean, the other option would be thinking of, I have another option. I'd love to use the hands, Anna's hand voting. Remember there was hand up was for yes, middle was for don't know, don't care, or I'm not sure. and then down was against. So I thought if we could, hands up would be voting for that one, that way of saying it, and hand down would be the balancing of the focus on an outcome, because with all these assemblies, there's a focus on an outcome, trying to achieve something while trying to be inclusive of people, and that's another tension there. So there's one tension is the tension between trying to create the world you want, but existing in the world as is. Another tension that we've all got is that one between trying to stop climate change, for example, and trying to include everybody in the process. So I just want to check what people might like. So if we have, I'll put them both in. Put them in the chat. But if a hand up, I don't know, Anna, can we vote that way? Is that possible? This is not really a. Yeah, okay, so so a hand up would be the first of those, the creating the world we need while existing in the world as is. So if you will like that one, put your hand up. If people like the last one, the balancing outcome and process, put your hand down. So where are we at? I like it. This is getting funky, Sarah. I like that. Okay, so the hand up was for the first one there, creating the balance between creating the world we need within the world as it exists, and then then those putting their hands down, wanting the last one. Okay, so it looks like it would be going for the creation of the world we need while existing in the world as it is. So that experience of wanting everybody to be facilitating and supporting that while recognizing that you may well put yourself or be put in the role of being the teacher at the front, operating that world. Okay, so that's the third one. So Eva, who's taking which group?
Well, yes, I'd like to offer Alex first choice, seeing as you've been plunged into this at the unawares. Do you have a particular one you'd like to hold? You don't mind? Okay. All right, well, why don't you do the first one about positive self-talk and care practices? I'll do the one on privilege and blind spots and including more of ourselves and other people, and you do the creating the world we need while existing as the world in the world that as it is. And just a reminder to all of us that we're keeping notes as well as normally in World Cafe, if we were doing it in person, we would have a tablecloth in front of us that is draw onable, a paper tablecloth, so that we and other people can make notes as we go along. And that's what we refer to as we're bringing a new group in. But because we're online and we're short of time, I think we'll probably take personal notes and just be able to catch the group up. And I think so. I think what we'll have to do is like set up breakout groups, split people randomly between them, and then possibly. Sorry,
is it 5 minutes in each?
No, I think it's a bit more than that.
Eva, would you like me to set up these rooms just now?
Yes.
Three
and
different
I think
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think probably what makes most sense is it will take me a couple of minutes, but if I make everyone a co-host, it means that you can move when you feel like it to another room. So if we number the rooms, so you know which number you are, you go to the next one. So if you're in 1, you go to 2. If you're in 2, you go to 3. If you're in 3, you go to 1 on your next turn. And if we have 10 minutes in for the first one, to have 15 minutes in the first one, and then 10 minutes in the next 2. Then
sorry, Eva, we're at 8 o'clock. We have half an hour.
Oh goodness. Okay.
So just a point on time. So maybe
okay.
Just 6 minutes in each. Then we've got some time at the end as well.
All right. 6 minutes each, and we've got a question from Sarah.
Just quickly, because you mentioned the open space technology, that generally means, in my experience, that you can choose whether or not you go into the rooms or not. So is this a little bit of a different version? Just to double check that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
In this one, we're
circling.
You are invited to go into all of them.
Forcefully invited.
Yeah, in order. Of course, you don't have to. You can do your own thing. So you're invited to go with the same group. So after the first 6 minutes of being in a room, your whole group will go, okay, we're in room 1, we're going into room 2 now. And from then on, I'm just going to very quickly, before we open the doors, invite everybody to be a co-host, which I believe will make you able to move at will between breakout rooms. So when you get the request from me, please accept it. I'm going to have to do it to each of you in turn, so it will just take a minute or two.
So I could put a timer on for 18 minutes. That means 6 minutes in each room.
Okay.
Okay.
Eva, if the whole group is moving at once, would it not make more sense for the 3 hosts to move?
Okay, that's great.
Yes, it probably would.
That's lovely.
The group needs to be split into 3.
This is the group intelligence.
Well, it's certainly takes intelligence anyway.
Okay, I think I'm through about half of the people inviting you to be co-hosts.
But we don't actually need that either, because as long as as long as Alex is a co-host, you are and I am, we can shift between.
Alex is a co-host. Okay. Yeah. The rest of you forget that you're co-hosts. Don't go sharing your screens or anything naughty like that. Okay, so have we got the breakout rooms?
Yeah, they're set up. So just labeled 1, 2, and 3. I can open them.
7.
Just now. Oh.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. And we're going to have to keep an eye on time and thank you. So the rooms don't have names. Okay, so one is positive self-talk. That's where we're starting. And then each of us will just move up. Okay. So I'm going in room 2.
Yeah, I'm in room 3. Great. Okay. Good. Joanna, are you bouncing us into them?
Oh, so they're not self-elected. I'm kind of, so
go with whatever works for you, Joanna, because we did change halfway through. So just you go with what's right.
If you can allocate people to
okay, separately
to the 3 rooms. Yeah, so they're roughly
and
equal.
then with the hosts with 1 in each. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah. I am gonna redo these then. 1 second.
And if you don't want to do the timekeeping and the note keeping, you can ask one of us to do the time for your group, give you less headaches.
Yes. Oh, I see. She just had to close the breakout rooms. Yeah.
It's all a mystery to me.
Yeah, it's so much easier when you can just like have a room or a table and you can walk over there in actual space rather than, this slightly arm's length.
I'm going to open the rooms and then I might do some reshuffling to put the hosts in, but that'll be the quickest way.
Okay, thanks, Johanna. Will I just move myself into a room?
Yeah, can you do that, Eva? Is that possible?
Yeah. So which
Tim? Sorry, Tim. So it would
I'm giving
be
room
room
two.
Yes, because Alex is in one. Oh yeah, you're in two, and then Justin's in three.
Great.
And Tim will put you in one.
I thought I was in the naughty corner.
There we go. It should be there. Oh, did you get one through, Tim? No.
I don't know. What am I supposed to get?
Can you see a little notification that's inviting you into room one? No. Maybe now?
Join. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm in. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So hard to remember. Okay, so Alex, how was your room?
Well, I had 3 rooms.
Yes, you had 3. Excellent.
I did have 3 rooms. One of them was very quick. And I think we moved from thinking about sometimes there was a sense of, well, I'm not sure that I'm aware of how I'm feeling when I'm facilitating, or that this hasn't come up, but also a sense of keeping some rituals that enable me as a facilitator to start things off well and finish well. So for example, just check-ins and check-outs, and that's starting the process in a different way. And a little bit of talking about the hand signals being different. And giving ourselves as facilitators space to breathe and to let go of what might be going on in our heads. Letting go of that kind of self-validation as well. I think that's probably summary. I hope I haven't missed anything.
Great. I was thinking we could share, if we made notes, we could maybe share them in the WhatsApp chat, which reminds me, good to share the WhatsApp link in case anybody hasn't been able to join yet. Yeah, okay. Justin, how about your room?
Yeah, no. Whoop, am I? Yes, I'm audible. Yeah, great. My handwriting is illegible, so I'm going to now try and see what people said. But absolutely fascinating. So in the first group, well, just the notion that actually trying to create the world we want while existing in the world we are in is not just about facilitation, but about everything that we're all trying to do. And that's kind of fundamental, and how you have integrity in that process. And then somebody talking about finding it difficult to remain neutral because being so passionate about stopping climate change, having an agenda there. How do you put that to one side when you're trying to bring everybody with you who may well not have that agenda themselves? So there's again that real tension between the focus on change and the wish to include everybody. Somebody pointed out you don't have to sit at the front. When the image we were having about somebody being a teacher, there's other ways of modeling the fact that you're not, even though as soon as you open your mouth and speak, you clearly are facilitating, but finding ways of modeling that, where you want to be on that side of how the world is and how you want it to be is important. Somebody else talking about assemblies as being a way of modeling that world. So we're in the world that we're in. We are modeling a different way of doing politics and decision making. So you're part of that process. And then somebody else kind of saying in the back of the mind, you need to be really clear where you're going to, but you need to be really respect the room as it is. There's no point being clear about where you're going to and not respecting the folk around you. You're not going to be bringing folk in, and I guess you're not going to be learning from them either. So that, again, that's really crucial to have both in a way, rather than just one's more important than the other. On the other hand, somebody else was saying, and by this time I remember to write on my phone so I can read my writing, more important to get the process right than focus on the outcome. It's a long process of learning. And then the idea of creating a space for idea incubation, so ideas don't fizzle out. That's something about coming into relationship with each other to make things real, rather than you've got 100 great ideas, but they don't actually manifest because you don't engage with others. And then there was in quote, in meetings, I just want to swear, but as a facilitator, it's easier. So I think that was just the notion that when you're in the world as it is, you just want to swear at this. Why are people not listening or thinking or whatever else? Or why am I having false consultations from the government? But actually, when you're facilitating, when you're caring for the group as a whole, it's much easier to accept people as they are. So there's something I thought in that about whether you're a facilitator or not, trying to be in the room in a way that is really enabling everybody else to be there while being clear about where you're trying to get to. And that's the tension and the balance that's productive and creative. That was me. Eva, how about your group? That was great session. It's really great. Thank you.
Yeah, there's just a lot of riches in here, and I hope that we can kind of, yeah, thank you for those notes, Alex. And we can also harvest from the chat, so that we all have access to the kind of thoughts that people have had. So if anything occurs to you, do jot it down in the chat while we're speaking. So I was looking at how we notice our privilege and blind spots, and how we include more of ourselves and other people. So somebody was talking about not sort of drawing back from the kind of standing at the front role, though having people doing that, but having a role where somebody's role is to look at the edges, to look at the margins, to who's being marginalized, who's not speaking, but looks like they might want to, or looking outside at nature, which is a kind of, yeah, particularly so important topic to me, is like, how do we, oh, it's not working. Okay, hang on. We'll do that. We'll check on that after. So yeah, how do we bring nature in? So having that person whose role is to look for what's being marginalized. There was another one about in meetings, having a person who was looking at the meeting dynamics and being the first person to check out. So they were looking at gender dynamics or respect for shared agreements, and that role would rotate. So it wasn't always left to one person. So that sounded like that was another kind of useful way of doing that. A reflection on that, just how triggering meetings can be, and how it can take some people like a really long time. Person working on with people with anxiety, and just how a big community meeting can feel like the last person that somebody with anxiety might want to be in, and how long it might take to kind of build the kind of processes and safety that somebody might need. An observation that the first person to speak often sets the tone. So if somebody's sharing with like a lot of experience of a topic, it can mean that other people won't want to share because they don't know so much, and that it can be a role of the facilitator to frame that for people. So, oh wow, you've heard a lot about this, or you've got a lot of experience here. Might be nice to hear from people who've got, who don't have so much experience, or who have experience of other things. So trying to find ways to bring people in, even in the face of someone who's claiming a lot of experience. There was comment thinking about sort of how do we engage schools so that this kind of gets more built in right from the beginning, because that's often where we learn to shut up. And yeah, and having a mixed team in developing and delivering, so that there is so that people can recognize from a wider range of humanity somebody who they may feel is a bit more like them in the team, but also their experiences feeding into the design of a process that aren't just from one particular social point of view. So yeah, loads in there. And we're close to the end. Justin, how would you like to round off?
That was all I was going to say. We're close to the end, and
yeah,
thinking that was a really great session. I just wanted to highlight that next week we're looking at community engagement and community mapping and engaged listening. So the next session and the session after that are about preparing for an assembly, what goes on before an assembly. So even though most of the sessions are focused on assembly, as Eva said, 90% of the work is before the assembly. 10% of the assembly, and then all that turns out to have just been 10% of the 90% of the work that you do after an assembly. Don't know if that maths works for you, but basically huge amount needs to go in the preparation, and a lot of focus is often on the assembly itself, and then an even more goes in afterwards to make sure that what happens in the assembly makes real change in the world. So we're going to be looking at community engagement, community mapping, the kind of communities we grew up in, the kind of communities we work in, and want to work in or live in now, and engage listening as a process and a way into that. Eva, anything you want to add, just to where we're out of time?
Yes, really just if anyone's having trouble joining the WhatsApp, please stick around if you can, and I'll get your mobile number and join you that way if that link's not working. Because we had some quite nice chats last week, and I think it can be a really nice place to keep this conversation going outside of these rather full sessions that we've got. But I really, really appreciate. I felt like I've certainly landed a little bit from being quite nervous in the first two sessions. I feel like I've landed a bit more, and have really, really enjoyed this session. Yeah. If you want to open your mics and say goodbye, then please do.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva.
Bye.
Thank you, Justin.
Goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.